Welcome to Crowning Connections with Rob Clemons. Today, I want to talk a little bit about business leadership, as we like to do on the show so often. If you're a small business owner out there, you're a business manager, you're a business owner. We have so many times that we're looking for creating ownership amongst our employees. We're always looking at trying to make sure that we can get the most out of people and that we can create a good company culture. That's a challenge for all of us. And we always know as business leaders, if we can get our employees to care more, if we can get our employees to commit themselves and understand our mission better, that we're going to get the most out of them. And from my experience in the industry, a lot of the questions I get on a day-to-day are, how did you guys do this company culture at Monarch Roofing? Or, how do I do this, duplicate this at my company? And it starts with several things. And a lot of times it's going to be hiring the right type of person, and it's going to be the way you train them, and it's going to be the way that you give them their tools for success. But at the end of the day, on a day-to-day challenge, we have as managers, we need to make sure that we're always motivating our people the best that we can. So today I'm very excited to have one of the most motivational guys that I've met. I met him originally in San Diego at a conference for GAF, and he kind of blew our minds. My whole team had a great time getting to know him. And so I'd like to welcome Mr. Waldo Waldman to the Crowning Connections podcast. Welcome, sir.
Great to be here, Rob.
Great to have you. Great to have you. I got so many things I could ask you about today, Waldo, but right off the bat, if you would, give the viewer a little perspective, a little background about yourself.
So right now I'm mostly a leadership keynote speaker and executive coach. I work with small business owners on maximizing team performance and culture and accountability, driving revenue, and retaining their top talent, especially in this war for talent environment that we're in. And then I travel the world doing programs on building cultures of collaboration and trust. Trust is a word people throw around very haphazardly these days. And there's more to trust than just being dependable. There's more to trust than just doing a good job. There's a lot of variables that go into it. So in my programs, I talk about building trust as that partner, what I call a wingman, a trusted partner, something I learned flying this F-16 in combat, where going up, dodging missiles and dealing with adversity. It was great to have a man and woman on your wing who had your back, who you trusted, who you knew would do the right job, and who you could go and fly, fight, and win together, not fly, fight, and survive. So that's kind of what I do, and how important it is to create that environment of trust and collaboration to go out and kick some butt as a team.
That's an amazing thing. And by the way, for anybody, and my background's doing a little funny thing, you can see in your background as well, Never Fly Solo, the book. I think this is an amazing book. I bought it for my whole staff. After we heard you talk, I literally bought copies for my whole management staff, and we talked about this because I was really inspired by what you said about trust and about the fact that I know you talked about in your book and also at the convention. You talked about the fact that you have to have so much trust that you can't sit there and second guess things because sometimes it can be so critical to a mission. And of course, you talked about break right. If you would share that story with us a little bit about how you look at the whole break right mentality, because this is the way you described it at your speaking engagement with us.
So, and people could see this, right? It's not just audio, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So everybody look on your screen. There's an image there of an F-16 fighter pilot looking over his shoulder at his wingmen, the men and women who he flies with. Then there's a concept called check 6. Now, if you can picture strapping into this plane, you can't see your most vulnerable position, which is behind you. And if you think of a clock, that's behind you. Now, if you're strapped in, barely able to move, you can't see if you're leaking fuel, if you're on fire, or if an enemy aircraft's trying to come up and shoot you down. However, if you have somebody at your right 3 o'clock or left 9 o'clock, just 90 degrees to your left or right, it's easier for them to look over their shoulder and see what you can see, to build the perspective, to call out the threat, to tell you to break right or break left, to take action. Now, when you do that, you're building this collaboration piece, because as a business owner, as a leader, it's impossible for you to see your most vulnerable position, and it's impossible for you to see the big picture. Revenue, operations, marketing, IT, finance, all those things are important. That's why it's important to build this team who has expertise in a certain niche and who's building your picture and giving you the situational awareness to maneuver accordingly. Now, uh, the key is when somebody tells you to break right or break left, i.e., give you feedback, you don't second guess them and say, I'm your boss, you break right, or let's have a Zoom call and discuss this, right? Because you got to be responsive quickly, especially in the business world. So, part of your ability as a leader to build your situational awareness is to be open to the break right or break left calls, to facilitate an environment and a relationship where others have your back, are going to call out the threats to you. And even if it means bruising your ego, even if it may mean pissing you off, right? And so you want to build a team that's courageous enough and that has enough trust that they're going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. That is the key. This is the most important point of any collaborative environment. I think it's great that you noticed that, Rob, because without this, then your collaboration and trust and your ability to perform as a team will degrade.
It's an amazing point. And you start off by talking about something, and you talked about recruiting. And I think that if I can speak for probably every business owner I've met in the last year at least, we're all having an issue with getting quality talent out there. And I think it comes down to recruiting, and it comes down to a lot of times being able to talk about your culture that you have at your company. I think people are interested in this. How do you find that you can convey this culture? And let me take a step back. I want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm asking. I'd like to know from the time that you bring in somebody to a company, and let's say that, at Monarch, we're kind of evolved. We've got a little bit of a culture here, and I feel very good about it. And so my challenge becomes when new people are coming in, I want to get them adapted to the culture. But what if you're starting from scratch? You got a small company, you're trying to create something early on that's special. How do you go about? I mean, what are some good tips for somebody that's trying to create a good culture at their company?
Well, they need to know what you stand for, what you fight for, and what you're passionate about. Uh, we talk about vision in business. Where are you going? What's the trajectory of your business? What are you trying to achieve? That's one type of vision. Okay, this is what we want to achieve. This is our shining, star on the hill. This is our beacon. This is our true north. This is where we're going to. Okay, cool. I'm bought in. I love where you're going. The second vision is of you as a leader, making sure that the men and women on your team understand what's important to you. How do you see the world? Health and fitness, integrity, culture, honor, responsibility, family, God, whatever those things are. How do you see the world? What are the palette of colors that are important to you? And this kind of has to do a little bit with standards. I think I have a little image here, but I'll show it later. But what are your standards, and what do you stand for? And this could be through conversation. This could be on how you lead your team events. Could be when you're out at Starbucks taking your team out for a cup of coffee or dinner, how you treat the waiter or waitress, how you show up in the world. This could be what they see on social media. If you're degrading other people or complaining out there, or not creating an image of honor and responsibility and respect in society, making fun of people that may look different or act different than you.
Yeah.
So you have to create a holistic picture. How do people see you? Not just your vision, but how do people see you? So there's really four visions. Vision of the company, your vision as a leader, how people see you, and the last vision, and the vision that enrolls people into your passion and your vision, is understanding their vision. What's important to them? How do they see the world? Learn about their family. My assistant is a great guy. We're very open with each other. He's had some challenges with his dad, very old school dad. His parents are divorced, et cetera, et cetera. There's challenges there. So a lot of my time I'm spending trying to understand how he sees the world, what his dreams and goals are. And when you could do that as a leader, and you try to enroll them into your vision and the vision of the company, then they'll be like, all right, Rob Clemons understands me. Jason, Lisa, Sabrina, she understands me. She knows what I want. I'm willing to take that hill for him or her, and I'll fight for it.
That's an amazing thing. So talking about trust, and it starts with a lot of communication and understanding your people. And I really love that. One of the concepts I know that you're big on is something called, I've always heard it called management by wandering around, but I know you call it leadership by wandering around, which I like that better, because I think that you got a different take on leadership versus management. But is that part of the strategy here in getting to know your people, just being amongst the people and understanding things, in addition to the one-on-one discussions, but just to actually be amongst the people and seeing what's going on?
Yeah, you can't be in your ivory tower, in your home office or at the building, sitting there sipping cappuccinos, working from the computer all day. Especially if you're a small business owner and contracting, where some of your folks are, and roofing, for example. You got to be out there getting your hands dirty with the men and women in the trenches, turning the wrenches. So we have a saying in the military: lose sight, lose fight. If you lose sight of the target, you're going to lose fight. If you lose sight of the teammates, you're going to lose fight. And if they lose sight of you, you're going to lose a fight. Once again, you can see how the vision's important here.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be visible. You got to show up on your Zoom or Teams calls, check in with them, make sure they're on frequency. They're not lost wingmen, in the clouds or whatever. And they have to see that you're out there, sweating in the trenches, turning the wrenches with them. So that's another way to build esprit de corps and respect, knowing that you're not just out there, in your quote unquote ivory tower.
Yeah.
So get out there, and we call it walking the flight line. As a young man, as a young fighter pilot, I never got out there enough to see what those folks were doing behind the scenes in the intakes in 105-degree weather, making things happen. So my commander made me get out there and walk the flight line to appreciate the hard work that they're doing. And it didn't mean I needed to do it all the time, but it meant it gave you a new, fresher appreciation, especially when you ask them to do something. You can say, I know what he or she's going through because I've been there and I've done that.
Wow. I can tell you, one thing that I used to like to do in the construction industry is occasionally I'd go do a job installation myself. And because you remember how hard it is, a lot of times as you raise up through the ranks, and at least in construction, you start off by doing a lot of things with your hands. And as you move through the ranks, you start using a little bit less of your hands and a little bit less of your hands. By the end of the day, you're using all your head, not much of your hands. And I felt like it was important to get out amongst the people and break a sweat and just realize, wow, at the end of the day, as hard as your stresses are as a manager, sometimes the people at the base level have so much going on that it's just a tremendous challenge. And we always have to stay connected to our people, right?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about fear and motivation. I know that you seem to be one of the more motivated people that I've actually heard. I believe in the authenticness of what you talked about with us. I'd like to talk a little bit about the fear side and conquering your fears, because you told a story, and if you would share it for the podcast, I would appreciate it. But about when you first got in, you knew that you wanted to get into. I don't know if it was always a fighter pilot. Was it always a fighter pilot, or was it just a pilot in general?
I wanted to really be in the military and eventually fly. I love the Air Force, and if you're in the Air Force, you might as well fly. And if you're going to fly, you might as well fly the best jet in the world, which is the F-16, right?
There you go.
You want to get out there and be amongst the best, and that was me. I call it a compelling goal. Call it maybe a little dysfunction in my upbringing. I'm just like, I got to go out there and be amongst people who want to kick some butt, right? I want to be with the best. So that has its advantages and disadvantages, much more advantages than disadvantages. But you want to say, hey, if I'm going to do something, let me go for the best, right? That's why the business owners and managers are watching this, because they have this goal, this challenge inside them that says, I want to grab life by the horns and kick some butt.
And sometimes you have to conquer your fear. And so I love this. And by the way, before I get into the rest of that question, my father's Air Force, retired colonel in the Air Force, and he was a chaplain, and I think he always, he felt like he played an integral role. And anytime, when Desert Storm came, my father was one of the first ones to get shipped out. Chaplains are. But as it goes, I know he always respected the pilot. He always wanted to be a pilot. But I feel like a lot of people, and I'm not saying my dad was in this category, but you look at this and you go, wow, that's a lot of power and that's a lot of height up there. So if you would talk to us a little bit about that story about the diving board, could you share that with the crowd here?
Yeah. So when I went to the Air Force Academy, in order to graduate, you have to jump off a 33 feet high diving board with a 35-pound pack, right? And it's like, it's really scary. And I grew up always afraid of heights. I was a kid at Space Mountain at Disney World. My twin brother would make fun of me. I was a kid at the end of the diving board, and 10 years old, looking down, and my twin brother screams jump, and I turn around and walk down the ladder of shame, right? I didn't want to jump. And so here I am at the Air Force Academy, and they say in order to graduate and have any chance of flying, you got to jump off this 33 feet high diving board, which really is pretty tall. And so I faced my fear and I jumped, last in my class to do it. And I did it actually a couple more times, by the way, Robert. There's more to the story than that. So I wanted to get it out of my system. And I guess the analogy really is, look, we're all peak performers. We're going to have some latent fear, right? Some weight that's hanging on us, our fear of failure, our fear of rejection, our fear of not being good enough, our fear of not reaching our goals, our fear of being average. It's kind of one of my fears. I think I want to kick some butt. So I'm like, I just don't want to be average. But there's a lot of ways that we define success as a parent, as a business person. So don't let your revenue determine your success, which is a whole topic of another discussion. And so a lot of folks who push this fearlessness, you got to have fearless leadership. It's a crock of baloney, if you ask me, because it forces us to be present. It forces us to acknowledge our humanity. It humbles us, makes us more human with our teammates, right? So your fear, your anxieties, your insecurities are the one thing that's tapping into your soul, saying, this is what you need to focus on. This may be holding you back from taking the next leap of faith, a leap of action in your life, which is going to make a difference. So there is a sense of risk involved. Mm-hmm. You always will have some risk when you make that leap. Will you fail? Will your parachute open up if you bail out? Will you not drown if you jump into the water? And so embrace that fear and understand, as a leader, that's the opportunity for you to be more than who you were yesterday. That's an opportunity for you to build resilience, because resilience isn't just about smelling a flower, listening to music or meditating. It's about saying, I am the type of person who's going to step into the fire, face my fears, make that leap, get uncomfortable, and it's going to build up this sense of power and confidence in me because I flew through the headwind. I dodged a missile. I stayed in it. I worked out this morning. I know you're into fitness too, Rob. Mm-hmm. And most of the folks I think are successful have this sense of fitness. And when you're running and you're kicking body, you're doing that power high intensity workout, and you're like, man, 10 more seconds, and you just feel like you want to quit. It's just that pain, and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Or you're running that last 2 minutes and your heart rate is sustained and you're starting to panic a little bit, but you just stay in that zone. You're resilient. The way people are able to do it, especially peak performing athletes or peak performing leaders, is they're used to being in that fear zone, that panic zone, and they're used to operating inside of it.
Yeah.
And they're building that resilience muscle, the callus of character, that fear, and that's saying, I can drive through this. So the more you put yourself out there and experience that discomfort and fear and those jumps, that exhilaration after you're done, the envisioning the victory, the better of a leader you'll become, the more risks you'll be able to take, the more fears you'll be able to overcome. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to it with that, but I think it's important to do that. And I didn't share, I think at GAF, how I overcame massive panic attacks and claustrophobia. I don't think I shared that with you guys.
No, I saw a little bit in the book about it, but I think it would be a great thing to share. If you could just talk about how did you do? I mean, obviously you attack the fear head on, but tell me a little bit about that. How do you get to that point that you can defeat something like that in such a? And by the way, anybody who's never seen it, I mean, those cockpits are kind of tiny, right?
Yeah, it's pretty small. You can see I got a little image of one there. Your knees could barely move, and your head is 2 inches from the top of the canopy, et cetera. So that's why you have to be really short and good looking to be a fighter pilot. So,
that's right, absolutely.
1 out of 2 ain't bad, right, Rob?
I'm not saying anything.
So if you look at, this is kind of, we could get a little deep here, but so everything was going great for me as a fighter pilot, was top of my class instructor pilot of the year. And basically I almost died in a scuba diving incident 3 years into my 11-year active duty flying career. And it brought out this latent claustrophobia. It was post-traumatic stress disorder. I would fly in the weather or at night and have these panic attacks similar to what I experienced on the water when I almost died scuba diving. And so every time I strapped it to the jet to fly in this tiny little cockpit, I had to deal with this phobia and anxiety and claustrophobia and fear that no one knew about.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't quit. I stayed in that plane and did my job. Now, once again, we're going to abbreviate this here, but there are folks that are watching this who may be having a great life, or life was going great last year, last week. You're cruising along, the weather's beautiful, business is solid, health is great, and then you get that phone call. You look at your test results, you have that conversation, the divorce paperwork gets signed, your PSA goes up, your kids are failing out of school, and there's some issue and turbulence in your life. Then suddenly you doubt yourself, you doubt your ability to execute, your sales are down, you lose your biggest customer, and you're like, how am I going to do this? This is the opportunity for you to double down on your passion and your courage and commitment and ask yourself, what kind of leader are you? The one that only straps in to fly when the threat isn't there, when the weather's perfect, or when you know that you may get shot at today, when you know you're going to get kicked in the gut, that you're going to have fear bubble up inside of you, that you may fail, and where the stakes are high. That's where great leaders operate in. That's where the leaders step up and say, I'm going to lead this formation, because if not me, then who? Wow. And so you may not be having panic attacks or claustrophobic fits or flying an F-16 on an 8-hour night mission in Iraq, where over enemy territory, where I've had some panic attacks. And so you got to stay in the jet. Couple quick things. Number one, I focused on my team. This is how I got out of my head and stayed focused, because there were folks that were flying with me who needed me and who depended on me to execute. Mm-hmm. If I failed on that mission or quit, I would leave the other guys and gals at a disadvantage that day. And I had these wings on my chest, this sense of responsibility. I earned those wings. If I couldn't fly when the proverbial crap hit the fan and my fears were present, then who was I? So our commitment is only tested in the heat of battle, a true philosophy and passion for excellence. So monitor your team, focus on what they need. Know that without you, they're at a disadvantage. And when you distract yourself from yourself, you focus on who needs you, and you check their six and help them out. You distract yourself from your fears and get present. And that's what true service is, right, Rob? You truly serve when you don't care about your own outcome, you care about others. And that's when flow happens. So that should be part of it. It's also a responsibility for you. Passion is not as important as responsibility. We're always going to lose the passion. Things are going to suck. We're going to be out there grinding it out. Our sales aren't going to be done. We're going to be cranky some days. We're going to wake up and not want to hit the gym or make the calls or get out there in the field or do the marketing. But it's your responsibility to still execute, even though your passion is down. It's like for any mom or dad watching this, when your kids were young and they didn't want to have, you weren't passionate about changing their diapers or feeding them. You didn't just blow them off and say, hey, I'm losing the passion. You say, no, it's my responsibility. And so I think we have to double down more on our responsibility. That's what great men and women and leaders say. It's my responsibility to do it. I need to step into the fire and lead my team because others are depending on me. That's how you build a trusting partnership and face your fears. And business. And then finally, most importantly, I think, is just to envision the victory, man. When you break through that fear and you make that leap and land after an 8-hour mission, conquering your inner fears, and you look at yourself in the mirror and say, man, I kicked some ass today. I made it happen. I conquered myself. Mm-hmm. That's when you start elevating your mindset and your confidence, build that courage, which is going to be the next level of success. You'll build the capabilities and confidence needed to take the next level, the next leap, and perhaps face the next fear. I get pretty passionate about this, Rob. So
my gosh.
Thank you for sharing.
I mean, it's so good because as you're talking, there's so many directions I want to go. You know what I mean? Like, you're always giving me too much good stuff, because I thought about a number of things I want to follow up with you on it. And one of them I'm going to talk about is victory in itself, because I think you eloquently discussed things like, what drives you and what pushes you through. And as leadership, we have to know that occasionally bullets are going to be fired our way, and we have to let the people know that we have a confidence, we have a plan. And I think
Right.
that's part of the trust side. But I want to talk about victory in itself. What does victory look like on a person to person basis? I know that we've talked a lot over time, and I'd love you to speak on this if you have any thoughts. But KPIs and letting people know, look, this is what victory looks like for you. And let me give you an example of what I mean. And I know these are kind of some old adages, but until somebody broke 4 minutes, it was like, yeah, no, nobody in the mile. It was like, oh well, you don't even think about it. You weren't even trying to do it.
Right.
What did victory look like to that person? So, do you feel that for managers that sometimes we're not clear enough on what victory actually even looks like?
I do. I do. And I also think it starts with the individual, either as a leader or a coworker, somebody who wants to eventually run their own business or hit 1 million in sales or buy their own home or get married for that matter. I
Hmm.
call it envisioning the victory. You may have heard me just say it before.
Yeah.
If you don't create a context in your mind of what success looks like, how you define it, and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants when it comes to success or hitting your numbers for the day or your workout or the weight you want to lose or the type of person you want to have a great relationship with, perhaps get married, etc., then it won't just magically pop up. So creating a definable true north, a
Hmm.
true accurate description of what that looks like. I was talking to a fellow speaker of mine, and I say, so what's your goal this year, in sales? What are you trying to do? He's like, oh, I'm not really sure. I'm like, well, have you been successful? Like, yeah, I've been doing pretty well. I'm like, well, what's your number? What are you trying to reach? Can you define it? He's like, I'm just going to keep doing great. I said, listen,
Oh,
that's fine. But, you know, when, how does it feel to make $100,000 a year? I remember when I was making $100,000 a year as a speaker, and I was in sales and marketing before that, but 100,000 a year. I'm like, what if I do 200? What about 500,000? Oh my God. What about $1 million a year? What about 1.5? And I hit all those goals.
wow.
And I created it and manifested in my mind. And I believe in God and spirituality and that, you have to manifest and create it in your mind. That's the beauty of the gift of our spirit and our soul. So you have to have that vision. And so as a leader, you got to create that vision, right? This is why it's important. Here's my goal. Here's what it looks like. Put it
Hmm.
into the brains and hearts of your teammates. And then when you're talking about vision, what do you want? What do you want to
Hmm.
make this year? I just want to make 50 grand and finish graduate school. Great. How do I help you achieve it? I want to lose not a few pounds. I want to lose 5 pounds and lose it by June. Is that a high and realistic goal, or is it something fluffy and stupendous that you'll never be able to meet? Make it definable, and definable goals should be broken down into definable actions
Hmm.
and disciplines that will allow you to get there. Same thing with revenue, key performance indicators, number of phone calls during the day, revenue of the month. How many rejections do I need before I get one call? How many speaking engagements do I need to make my goal, et cetera. So define it. Don't be haphazard about it. And here's the last thing. What's great about great teams and mentors and coaches, the folks who show you the way and say, this is how you can go in and crush the enemy and hit your targets, is get around other like-minded leaders,
Hmm.
okay, who maybe have different businesses or similar ones who are going to create a context of success for you that you may not be able to fly in right now.
Hmm.
This is why I love coaching folks and getting in mastermind groups, because everybody has his or her own perspective on success. They may be great in accounting and finance. They may be great in marketing and social media. They may be great in operations or retaining or onboarding. When you're around those folks, you're sharing best practices. They're creating new realities for you and allowing you to say, now I have a different goal and or perhaps a different tool to use to get there. That's the power of great wingmen, men and women who sharpen your sword. You can get with every month or so to break bread and sharpen each other's sword.
we're talking about leadership here today on the podcast. And I think that's a very, very good tip, underrated tip. Get amongst like-minded people that can push you along, lift you up, because I can tell you, if you've ever had a gym partner that was really good, if you've ever had a church group that you met up with that was really good, you will find some of your greatest success because you all lift each other up, and at times that you cannot even predict it at times. So I really love that you said that. Let me leaders lift. There you go. Wow.
That's right.
That's powerful stuff. I'm going to go a different route now. So we're talking some, level 3.0, 4.0, 5.0 leadership advice here. And I love that. What about when you get the people at the very base level? You hire a new employee out of college. They haven't had a lot of experience with this. And I find this is a personal challenge as a leader. Sometimes I feel like, I'm trying to push them to leadership levels too fast. What do you recommend, when you have that dynamic kind of approach, like yourself, you probably get people who want to do anything for you, but, at the base level, you hire somebody and they're not quite ready yet. They're not quite ready to take that next level. They're not ready to conquer their fears, things like that. What are some ways to get people moving along on the front end, just to not throw them into the deep end of the pool just yet? Or should you throw them the deep end of the pool?
So there's a lot to that question.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is when you're leading, they need to see you emulating the type of standards and characteristics that you want them to.
Mm-hmm.
They need to see you putting in a hard day's work, showing up on time, asking questions, being vulnerable, saying, I don't know, or I need help. Showing an encouragement, right? So you want to emulate those characteristics to your teammates, to those maybe young men and women who may be new to the business or maybe new to the industry, maybe with 20 years in another industry, but they're kind of lost. They have the values, the work ethic, etc. But they just need a little bit more mentorship and guidance when it comes to your business. So stick to the fundamentals. As a fighter pilot, when we brought men and women into the fighter squad, into training, they already had to become pilots, right? And I was an instructor pilot before flying fighters. So I would teach young men and women how to fly. We weren't doing formation 3 feet away from another aircraft at first. We first learned how to stay wings level, keep our airspeed consistent. Here's the horizon. Here's how you land the plane. Here's how you do a 30-degree turn. I mean, basic, simple stuff. And so you have to teach them the fundamentals on how to fly. And you can't take that for granted. So you have to put your team through basic training, the core values that are important, the fundamentals of operational excellence. Here's how we conduct our procedures. Here's how we install a roof or, install an HVAC system. Here's how we do a cold call or a bold call, because you never cold call. You always call with
a bold call.
Bold, right? Yeah,
I like it.
I do some sales training, and I call how to turn a cold call into a bold call.
Sure.
So give them the basic training and the tools easy, and it has to make it step by step. We have checklists in the Air Force. You do this, then you do this, then you do this, right? And so keep it very simple, uncomplicated for them. Have something to refer to, your standards of operation, your procedures, and then always be available to them when they call out for help. Mayday, mayday. Hey, that's your call to action to lead. Now, that being said, if you see folks who aren't putting in the time, who lack the work ethic, the integrity, the passion, the commitment necessary to win, that's a hard thing to train. And so your job as a leader is also to identify those folks who may not be emulating excellence, give them all the tools, everything you need to do. But if they're being lazy or even worse, don't have the integrity, then you have to have that tough conversation and potentially move them to another position or remove them from your job, because nothing's worse than having a wingman or a wingmam on your team who isn't executing with competence. So we can't handhold. We got to lift and push perhaps, but we don't want to handhold and accept mediocrity, because then it's going to influence the rest of your teammates as well.
Totally agree. And I love what you said there. When we hire people, sometimes we might not have hired the person that fits our company the best. And I think that's a responsibility of leaders. And there are a lot of things that, over here at Monarch, I know you know a little bit about us, but, we've grown to the size, been very blessed, and hard work has paid off to that. We have 5 different departments now. And so I have 5 leaders of those departments. And Some of the things that I usually come back to when we've had one of the team members underneath that has not quite performed to our standards. Sometimes we haven't hired the right type of person in the first place. Sometimes we haven't trained them properly. I feel like a lot of times it's on us as leaders to have our ear to the ground on that. And if I could, I want to share one thing that's my tip to leaders out there. When you get to the reviews, you said something a few moments ago about, having those clear and identifiable goals. I feel like a lot of times when we get to our reviews, our 90-day reviews, our 1-year reviews, our weekly reviews, if we are, sometimes the goals are too ambiguous. It's like, hey, keep having good customer service. Hey, keep, smiling at people, it's like, I prefer to see, and I'll usually go back to my department managers and I'll say, hey, let's come with a more tangible goal. Let's get 50 Google reviews in this next year, so that when I'm sitting down with them and doing their next review a year from now, I can say, hey, look, we set a goal of 50 Google reviews, but you got 60. Great job, And so I feel like that's something as managers we owe to our employees. So I do appreciate, your take on that. If we could, I know we're getting towards the back end of this, and I'm so grateful of your time. I want to rapid fire maybe a couple of questions at you. Yeah. But before I can do that, I got one of my favorite stories you told. If you would share it with us, I just love it because I believe perseverance is a big role in this, okay? And you told us a story when you did our keynote speaking. And by the way, anybody who ever needs a keynote speaker, look up your wingman here. Waldo Waldman, you're amazing, and you blew us away. So I definitely can give you that plug. But one of my favorite stories was you talked about the event that you were putting yourself out there to speak at, and they were going to hire. And I don't want to give away the story, so I want to let you tell it. But they were going to hire a certain boxer that we will all know the name of, and I would love if you could just tell that story real quick. It's such a great one.
Yeah. So when I first started out speaking, I'd pick up the phone and did a lot of bold calling, right? Made some mistakes, but I was in sales and marketing before, so I had some experience cold calling or bold calling, and I applied a lot of the lessons that I learned in the military: attention to detail, preparation, aggressive, right? But confident at the same time, and being proactive, right? Not being overly too eager. So a lot of the things that were necessary as to succeed as a fighter pilot, I applied to the business world. Look, I'm a pretty intense guy, but I don't I dot my I's and cross my T's like we all should. Long story short, company was Juniper Networks. I was trying to get a keynote speech in Scottsdale, Arizona, and instead of hiring me, I sent them a contract. I thought it was a done deal. They went with Sugar Ray Leonard, the world middleweight champion, right? And this guy's a celebrity, right? Sugar Ray Leonard. I compete against a lot of these guys and gals in the speaking world. They earn their wings in sports, but as far as I'm concerned, they didn't earn the wings in business that I did. So basically, I knew it was time for me to push up that throttle and stay passionate, because I was pissed off. And if you're not pissed when you lose a sale, you shouldn't be in business.
Absolutely.
So I called him up and basically convinced him to change his mind by asking him, how much money Sugar Ray Leonard made when he lost a fight. $2 million, right? Not a bad day for losing. And what a fighter pilot makes when we don't do our job. I asked him if he was confident that Sugar Ray Leonard would customize a program like I would. I asked him if he thought Sugar Ray Leonard ever made a cold call in his life, right? Probably not. He was relying on his celebrity brand. And now Sugar Ray Leonard's a great speaker.
Oh, sure.
And very awesome on the platform, and one of the most legendary athletes that ever was. But I wanted it more, and I didn't quit. And I picked up that phone and I asked for the sale with confidence. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that I was the right choice. And so many times we're going to experience rejection. They're going to go with a celebrity brand, the guy or gal, the company down the street who you compete with, who has better billboards and better marketing and pay-per-click, social media, yada, yada. But if you believe in your heart of hearts that you're the right solution, and if you deliver that with confidence, if you ask your peers for help in that, when that objection comes, which I did, if you prepare relentlessly about all your competitors and know to pre-qualify or have a pre-objection before it happens, then you'll minimize those we're going in another direction emails. and you'll be able to get back up off the tarmac and knock your competitor out. So it takes work, it takes humility, it takes passion, because ultimately, I think at the end of the day, Tom Levy, who ultimately hired me, bought my heart, not just my head. He
Yeah.
believed in me because I believed in myself, and people buy that passion these days almost as much as they buy your expertise and skills.
100%. And it's a happy ending to that story, but I got to tell you, you could have easily walked and said, okay, well, that's just got a more famous guy, but you fought through it. And I think if you're in sales, if you're in management, if you're ever in a situation, and hey, life is about sales, it may be the just anything that you're doing out there that's important to you. Don't turn and run the first time you get a rejection, and have confidence and passion in what you're doing and perseverance. And that is such a powerful story. And I appreciate you sharing it with us, because it spoke to me more than you know. So I'm going to rapid fire a few questions for you, and we can kind of like just take it as it goes. And so what do you think is the biggest, and look, loaded question, right? But what do you think, and you talked to a lot of businesses, what do you think is the biggest mistake most managers make?
They don't ask for help. They don't take off their mask and seek help from others, or maybe get some coaching to help them improve their perspective and get better.
That's amazing. I love that. I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't know if you read The Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger, but he talks about this, and this was CEO of Disney, and obviously amazing career. And he said the one thing he was never afraid of doing was to say, I don't know a lot about this particular subject. Can you help me with it? I think that was just such a powerful note. I love that. Next question. Have you ever done a DISC assessment or Myers-Briggs or anything like that?
Yeah, MBTI.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm an ESTJ.
ESTJ, okay.
From years ago, but that was probably 25 years ago. I wonder what I am now. I think I'm a little more introverted than some people give me credit for.
Right.
Yeah.
You get your power from within. Well, I can tell you, I've taken the Myers-Briggs a number of times over the years. It always comes up ENTJ. So that's a good thing. If you ever get a chance to take a DISC assessment, let's circle back around. I'd love to see what you are. Kind of have a feeling, but I don't want to blow the suspense. As far as yourself, you're a great motivational speaker, 100%. That's from the heart. When you're looking to get motivation, who do you listen to?
Man, Ed Milet, if you know who Ed Milet is, he's pretty sharp.
Oh, yeah.
Another guy is the Warrior coach. Goodness gracious, I know his name. I was just listening to it. Garrett J. White. Garrett J. White. You know who he is?
Yeah, I've heard of him. Yep.
Yep. Pretty intense dude, hardcore. Actually, a strong believer in God. Divorced a couple times. Just good, juicy stuff. Check out Garrett J. White. I love it because I'm in the gym. I listen to this. I sit and I put it on the phone, and your environment, what you feed in your brain is important, right? This morning I read something spiritual. I say every day. I try to do it every day, but it's a discipline I need to stay with. But I read something spiritual. I think it's important to kind of give you that true north, that vector. Fill yourself with something good. Fill you something with something positive. I call it setting the vector of your day, a direction. And Ernest Holmes, if you're familiar with Ernest Holmes, it's just an amazing author, and I love his.
Haven't read it, but I will definitely check it out. Do you have a favorite book that you're reading right now, or just a favorite book in general?
Oh, goodness gracious. So I'm reading the presence principle about being present. That's next to my bed. I'm also reading the Jordan.
You're going to give me Jordan Peterson, or are you going
Jordan Peterson? Yeah, Jordan Peterson.
Perfect. Yeah.
12 Rules of Life. Yep. I'm 3/4 of the way done with that. I just love his stuff. I'm a little conservative in my values. I kind of lean to the right. But I like his philosophy. I like that he kicks me in the stomach a little bit, saying, "Oh man, I need to improve that." So Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules of Life. I love that. And you got to be careful when you're scrolling through your phone or listening to stuff, because you can get distracted down the rabbit hole of BS really, really quick. So make sure that you're intentional about what you're listening to.
Intentional, yes. You know what, that's great. And that is a great book. I've read that one as well. And a lot of great principles from that. And there's also this book called Never Fly Solo. Definitely make sure you read that one. Yeah. You don't have to read it, but everybody else does, Hey, listen, I appreciate everything you've given us today. We could talk for hours. Obviously the podcast, I try to keep it to a certain range, but amazing tips. If you guys are out there, you're looking for leadership, you're looking for something to change your business, check him out. Waldo Waldman. You can see the QR code here.
The
I'm
website giving you
address.
guys if they want my audio book for free as a listener of your podcast, it's $20 on Audible.
Wow.
If you go use that QR code or go to that website, when you get it, just send me a quick note saying, "Hey, I was listening to Rob Clemons' podcast."
Crowning Connections, yes, sir.
Yep, Crowning Connections, and so that's a free gift for all of you guys. And then that way you can get into my ecosystem, my Sense and Resilience videos. And you'll get links to my social media as well. And if you want to do some one-on-one coaching or team coaching, that's a great way to get in touch with me as well.
Oh, terrific. And that's, I was going to ask you that, how people could get in touch with you. So fantastic advice there. We've been blessed to have you on the show today. A lot of great advice. Thank you so much for being on. And we would love to have you on in the future.
You got it, Rob. Thanks for your leadership and mentorship too. I picked the right table to sit next to before I did that speech, and I believe there was a reason for that happening. And I'm proud to be your wingman.
Wow, likewise, and there is a story in there in itself. We'll have to tell that one a different time, but it was a great way that we met. So, everybody, thank you for viewing us today. Make sure you like it and share our podcast with others. And we will see you next time on Crowning Connections with Rob Clemons.